My name is Emanuel Kanal, or Manny Kanal, and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a private pilot with instrument rating, and I have approximately 900 hours. On the evening of August 31st, and transitioning into the early morning of September 1st, 2008, we were flying a turbocharged Columbia 400, now called a Cessna 400, from White Plains, New York to Allegheny County in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania region. After more than an hour into the flight, during level cruise at 10,500, I noticed that the manifold and oil pressures were dropping. Slowly at first, but more precipitously within a few minutes. I planned to divert at that point to either Altoona or Johnstown when the engine suddenly sounded deeper and ran quite roughly and deteriorated rapidly over a few seconds. And this lasted only a few seconds, and suddenly there was an explosion or a bang. There was an intense smell of burnt oil and an immediate loss of power and an immediate initiation of a very violent shaking of the entire plane. I first tried to stabilize the plane and within a minute or so declared an emergency to Cleveland Center, in whose sector I had been located at the time this occurred. I informed them that I had lost my engine and that I was diverting.
Cleveland Center, 613 Juliet Mike, do you copy? This is 613 Juliet Mike declaring an emergency.
November 3 Juliet Mike, Cleveland, go ahead.
I've lost my engine and I'm heading down towards the closest airport, which is...
All right, November 3 Juliet Mike, Altoona Airport is just off your left side. Fly heading at 210, that should take you right to the airport.
210, heading towards the airport now for 3 Juliet Mike.
By this time, the plane was shaking so violently that I could not read the G1000 displays anymore. I decreased the throttle as much as I could. I dropped back the throttle as much as I dared to do, and it did actually seem to decrease the violence of the shaking of that aircraft. And I asked the air traffic controller for some frequencies, such as the frequency to turn the lights on at Altoona, since the airport was already closed at this time. By now it was about 1 o'clock in the morning or so.
What is the number, the frequency for Altoona, please?
Yeah, try 123.6. That's the traffic advisory frequency. I do not have a frequency available for the lights right now, but try that on 123.6, see if that works for you.
Roger, try that now.
November 3 Juliet Mike, any luck on the lights? Yeah, November 3 Juliet Mike Airport, now it's 12 o'clock and just under 9 miles.
I do see the beacon, but I'm still trying to cycle the lights.
Altoona elevation, airport elevation is 1,504 feet. Touchdown is 1,457 feet.
I tried reaching Altoona Airport at best glide and realized at one point about 8 or so nautical miles away that there was no way I was going to be able to make the runway from that altitude and that distance or position.
I will not make the 613 Juliet Mike will not make the field, but I'll be heading in that direction.
November 3 Juliet Mike, thank you. 6 miles out right now, sir. November 3 Juliet Mike, do you see any roads you could possibly put the airplane down on?
That's a negative for 3 Juliet Mike.
November 3 Juliet Mike, you're almost there, sir. You're about 4 miles out right now.
Roger that.
I tried adding throttle, and as I did, that caused the plane to shake violently, more violently than it was. And as I backed off on the throttle, the violence of that shaking decreased. I realized that without any power, without even a small amount of power, there's no way I was going to make the field, so I had to have something. And so I adjusted the I adjusted the throttle to provide just enough thrust to try to decrease my rate of loss of altitude, and at the same time not increase the violent shaking of the plane so much where I would feel that it might jeopardize the integrity of the airframe. This setting worked initially, but the violence of the shaking seemed to worse as I approached the field, and I had to keep sort of backing off on the throttle.
November 3 Juliet Mike, radar contact lost. How's it going, sir?
Understood.
November 3 Juliet Mike, Cleveland.
Go ahead, Cleveland.
Can you make it, sir? I cannot see how far out you are. Do you think you can make it?
That's affirmative. There's a chance I'll get there, and I'll let you know as soon as I can.
God bless you, sir.
I was pretty convinced at one point that I was going to be able to make the field as I was getting extremely close to it. And all this time was no flaps, and I wanted to facilitate best glide at all this time. And so at that point, I pulled the mixture and RPM and the throttle out completely, and actually landed quite a bit hot with no flaps at about 95 to 100 knots, just about on center line, immediately to the left of center line, and used the brakes to help bring the plane to a complete stop. There were no injuries, thank God, and actually it was a rather uneventful landing.
I am down at, hold on 1 second, please. I am down at Altoona, but the plane is dead on the runway, so you do not want anyone else trying to land on this runway.
November 3 Juliet Mike, thank goodness, that's good, and yeah, we'll go ahead and note them the airport closed, and there should be a flight service station there somewhere on the field. If your radio, well, obviously your radio's still working, I'm going to give you a frequency here, and maybe you can call them up, and we're trying to get in contact with the state police now and get somebody out there to help you out.
Please, my radio's going to go dead since I have no engine anymore.
Understand, sir. Just you can stay off the frequency here, and we'll get the police out there as soon as we can.
Roger that, thank you. And I'm going to sign off now, if that's all right with you then.
That is fine, sir. Good job.
Thanks for your help, much appreciated.
When I got out of the plane, I couldn't see much, but I was definitely able to make out that the plane was covered in oil everywhere, and that there was what appeared to be a connecting rod sitting in the cowling under the alternator belt, and pieces of the aluminum fins from the engine that had broken off just lying in the cowling openings. Subsequently, I found that days later, we recognized that the entire engine had actually blown open, and that the connecting rods, some of the connecting rods had actually burst through the top of the cowling. We waited for rescue trucks to show up, and about 20 or 30 minutes later, they did, and they were exceptionally helpful in getting us getting the plane pulled even further from the runway at that point, all the way out to to where it was going to eventually be parked, and making sure everything was fine and making sure that nobody was hurt, which thank God we weren't. The problem was the engine itself. Then technically, I guess this was referred to as an incident by everyone, and there was nothing I had to do. I contacted FAA. I sent them an explanation as to what happened, and in fact, they were exceptionally supportive and very actually complimentary to the way the flight ended and how I flew the plane. And I spoke to the air traffic controller, actually the individual controller in Cleveland, who I thought was exceptionally helpful, and I was and continue to be extremely thankful to that gentleman, and there was no paperwork there either. At this point, it was just a matter of getting the plane repaired and back ready to fly. An unsung hero in this whole event actually was my wife, my non-pilot wife, who is, to put it mildly, not crazy about flying. Once this all occurred, she was amazing. The fact that she could have panicked and could have caused tremendous difficulty in just trying to keep the airplane in control, but she was wonderful about it, and she truly is one of the unsung heroes behind this whole event. Above all, just fly the plane, aviate, navigate, and communicate in that order. And air traffic control is fantastic, especially if, God forbid, there's an emergency. There's nothing, not only not to be afraid of, they're your friend, and they are there to help get you the information you need, and that's the cockpit resource management that we need to take advantage of. All this time we were in contact with the air traffic control from Cleveland, who did a wonderful job of helping me out. He was wonderful in that he was able to provide me exactly what I needed. In fact, coming to think about it, air traffic control job is to maintain separation, and then in an emergency, clearly their job is to leave you alone, let you fly the plane, and just help you out in any way you need, and that is precisely what this gentleman did. I also want to point out that during this whole time, my passenger, my wife, was with me on the plane, and to hear another professional voice, calm, professional, communicating, not panicking, that could only have had a tremendously beneficial impact on her as well. The whole system benefits when you just work together professionally to try to work yourself out of a bad situation. and resolve it together as a team.